My sister and husband betrayed me. They ran away together on our anniversary, and now she sends me smug photos while I'm left to rebuild my life. Caleb, my husband of 8 years, and I had been together for almost a decade. At 45, Caleb and I were partners, in every sense of the word. I'm 42 now. In the beginning, our love was effortless. Every moment together felt like a treasure, and we were happy, truly happy. There was laughter, dreams, all those little things that cemented our love. Our bond felt unbreakable as we faced life side by side. We were a team, and nothing could tear us apart. Our smiles were contagious, and the world seemed a little brighter with each passing day. The years passed in the blink of an eye, anniversary after anniversary filled with love. Cozy Sundays, spontaneous date nights, we cherished it all. Life felt simple, beautiful, and everything was right as long as we were together. But then, things changed. It started small, insignificant even, but I noticed. Our date nights grew a little tense, the laughter not quite as easy. Caleb started spending more time on his phone, his attention drifting away from me. I could feel it in the air, a tension that had never been there before. The warmth that once filled our relationship began to fade. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was slipping away from us. Was it just me, or was our bond starting to unravel? The intimacy we once shared seemed to vanish, replaced by a cold distance that I couldn't bridge. I started to suspect Caleb was having an affair. The late-night calls, the cryptic messages, they became too frequent to ignore. And his behavior? It was off. He seemed distant, even when we were so close. When I asked, he reassured me that it was nothing, that I was reading too much into it, that he was just swamped at work. But deep down, I knew. It wasn't paranoia. Something was wrong. Then one day, as I was doing his laundry while he walked the dog, I found it. A lipstick smudge on the back of his shirt. A chill ran through me. This wasn't just a gut feeling anymore. This was real. The evidence hit me like a brick, leaving me with a knot in my stomach, a growing unease that clung to the air. Caleb had always been so good at deflecting my suspicions, gaslighting me, but this was different. This mark, this undeniable sign, couldn't be explained away. So I kept quiet. I didn't confront him immediately. Instead, I chose to investigate. Quietly. My heart raced as I searched his laptop. I needed answers, and my pulse thudded in my ears as I combed through his emails, his browsing history. For a fleeting moment, relief washed over me. I found nothing. No incriminating evidence. Could it be that I had been wrong all along? But then I remembered the lipstick smudge. It couldn't just be an accident. He wore a suit over his shirt every day. There was no way that mark was a coincidence. My mind raced, torn between relief and a gnawing suspicion. Was it possible? Was my marriage really on the brink? That Friday evening, I decided to surprise Caleb with a dinner date. Maybe it would help us reconnect, give me the chance to bring up the lipstick. I was hopeful, excited. I headed to his office to pick him up, imagining the night we would have, a chance to talk, to fix things. But when I arrived, a message from him stopped me in my tracks. He'd be working late. The words hit me like a slap. I sighed, resigned, accepting his explanation without confrontation. But as I turned to leave, something made me pause. Caleb was walking out of the office. Confused, I watched as he got into his car and drove off. The message about working late didn't match what I was seeing. Instinct kicked in, and I decided to follow him. What I saw next would shake me to my core. I trailed behind him, my mind racing. Caleb pulled into a bar. My confusion deepened. Why was he there? Why had he lied to me? I parked a distance away and watched as he casually walked inside, unaware that I was just a few steps behind him. What I saw next made my blood run cold. Caleb was chatting with women. He was laughing, exchanging numbers as if nothing was wrong. He was so at ease, so casual. My heart ached and disbelief twisted in my stomach. This was the man I had been married to for 8 years. How could he? Driven by a mix of disbelief and a surge of desperation, I decided to confront one of the women. She was outside, probably waiting for an Uber. My hands trembled as I walked up to her. I asked her directly about Caleb, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. She raised an eyebrow, surprised, and then asked if I knew him. "He's my husband," I replied. Her eyes widened in shock. And then she confirmed my worst fears. Caleb had been lying to her. He'd told her he was divorced, that he was struggling with an ex who had cheated on him. The words hit me like a punch. I was disgusted by the man I thought I knew. The truth was more vile than I could have imagined. Caleb had been pretending to be someone else, fabricating stories just to hook up with strangers. I wanted to vomit. The betrayal stung in ways I couldn't process. I had no words, only a numb feeling that consumed me. I left the bar, dazed, not wanting Caleb to see me. The weight of it all crashed down on me when I got home. That night, It was the hardest night of my life. I cried in a way I hadn't since my father passed away. The pain was unbearable. The realization that the man I wanted to spend my life with was capable of this, it broke me. And then, the worst part. He didn't betray me because he loved someone else. No, he betrayed me for meaningless flings with random women. It hurt more than I could have ever imagined. When Caleb returned that night, I pretended to be asleep. I could smell the whiskey on him, the sweat on his clothes, the arrogance in the air. He didn't even try to hide it anymore. He thought he could get away with it. My mind raced, plotting my next steps. I stayed awake the whole night, unable to rest. At 6 a.m., I made my move. Caleb was still asleep, unaware of what was coming. Quietly, I took his phone out of the bedroom, knowing I needed answers. His messages, calls, photos, I went through it all, documenting everything. Evidence. Proof. I snapped pictures with my own phone, my hands shaking as I took in the depth of the lies. After he left for work, I drove straight to my mom's. I needed someone to hold me, someone who could make sense of all this. At her house, I poured out everything, every painful detail. She listened, her face darkening with every word. My mom was furious, beyond outraged, but she didn't want me to confront Caleb. She knew him too well. He would lie, manipulate, twist everything around. She advised me to start looking for a lawyer, to understand my options. What was at stake? My marriage? My dignity? She warned me that I needed to be smart, to protect myself. I was disoriented, numb from everything that had happened. But I listened. I asked her not to tell anyone in the family, not yet. She agreed. For the next few weeks, I researched, contacted lawyers, trying to find someone who could help me navigate the storm ahead. Working from home gave me the time I needed to find the right legal help. I knew it was time to act, strategically, methodically. I wasn't going to let Caleb's betrayal define me. I wasn't going to let him win. That's when I met Loretta, an experienced Latina attorney who would guide me through the mess Caleb had created. My attorney, known for her expertise in handling divorce cases involving extramarital affairs, sat across from me. She was calm, professional, yet I could sense the weight of my turmoil in the way she listened, intently and with understanding. Together, we carefully crafted a strategy, discussing every potential move. What legal steps would I need to take? What would protect me in this tangled mess? It felt almost surreal, but I was preparing myself to move forward, to end this chapter of my life with Caleb. He had no idea what was coming. His routine of late-night work was still in full swing. Our anniversary was looming ahead, and I couldn't bear to spoil the memory of our years together with divorce papers. I would wait, just until after the anniversary. Little did I know, the storm was already on the horizon, and it was about to hit harder than I could ever have imagined. That night, as I prepared what I hoped would be a final, unforgettable dinner for Caleb, everything felt heavy with anticipation. I had no idea that this evening would mark the end of us. I waited for him to return, the smell of the food filling the quiet, anxious space of the room. Then my phone buzzed. A message from my youngest sister. Hesitantly, I opened it. What I saw nearly stopped my heart. It was a picture of Caleb smiling smugly beside Rachel. Their faces were too close, their smiles too intimate. My world tilted. I stared at the image, struggling to process it. Had my sister's phone been hacked? Was this some cruel joke? I called her immediately, my breath shallow, my hands trembling. Rachel answered, her voice unbothered. I asked her, desperate, if everything was okay, if her phone had somehow been compromised. Her response was flat, almost indifferent. "The picture is real," she said. A coldness washed over me, and I struggled to catch my breath. The words, the betrayal, it was too much. "How could you?" I whispered. "How could you do this to me?" I fired off questions, hoping for some explanation that would make sense of this twisted reality. Rachel explained, in the same detached manner, that she and Caleb had met a few weeks ago at a bar. They'd felt a connection, she said. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. My mind raced, but I couldn't catch up. Rachel, my sister, the person I'd trusted most in this world, had betrayed me in the most unimaginable way. She went on. Caleb had told her that he was happiest when he was with her, that he was done pretending. They had planned to reveal their relationship on our anniversary. That, she said, was why he'd been acting so distant. The realization hit me like a physical blow. How could two people so close to me, one my husband, the other my flesh and blood, do this? Rachel, almost smug in her tone, ended the conversation with a cold wish. "I hope you understand our love," she said. "Just leave him and let him be happy." Then the call ended. The silence afterward was deafening. I was stunned, overwhelmed by a mix of shock, anger, and grief. My sister had turned on me in a way I never imagined. Tears blurred my vision, but they weren't for Caleb this time. They were for the devastation of losing Rachel. My own sister. My blood. How could this happen? In the haze of pain, I sent Caleb a message. I needed him to understand the depth of the betrayal, the heartbreak, the hopelessness I felt. I wrote it all down, raw and honest, pouring out the pain that had festered in me for so long. Attached was an image of the divorce papers I had prepared, the papers I would leave for him to sign. No more waiting. It was done. I also sent the same picture to Rachel, a message for her. I wanted her to know what she had done, what it would mean for her, and I hoped that when the truth about Caleb's deceit fully settled in, she'd realize what a terrible mistake she had made. As the weight of my decisions pressed on, I reached out to my mother. I needed somewhere to go, somewhere to grieve. When I arrived at her house, the floodgates opened. I collapsed into her arms, tears pouring down. She could sense something was wrong before I even spoke. "What did Caleb do?" she asked, her voice soft with concern. How could I explain that Rachel, my own sister, had betrayed me? I showed her the photo, the proof. My mother's face twisted with shock, her eyes widening as she took in the image. The horror on her face mirrored my own as she gasped. In that moment, she crumbled. She couldn't fathom how Rachel could do this. The pain of it was too much. My mother, ever strong, pulled me close, whispering assurances that we would get through this together. Her arms were the only thing that felt like home. In the days that followed, I was a shell of myself. I couldn't summon the energy to do anything, let alone face the world. My mind felt fogged, my heart shattered. My mother, furious and protective, took it upon herself to confront Rachel. She called her over and over, hoping to hear some inkling of remorse, but Rachel's answers only fueled her defiance. She didn't see the harm. She didn't care. She insisted that her relationship with Caleb was true love, denying the hurt she had caused. And all I could do was replay the image in my mind, the smug smiles of Caleb and Rachel, the deceit, the betrayal. The wound festered with each passing hour, deepening the cut they had both inflicted on me. I couldn't help but wonder, should I warn Rachel about Caleb's true nature? Should I let her know exactly who he is before she makes the same mistake? Or would that be pointless, given how convinced she was that they were meant to be? I wasn't sure, but the questions gnawed at me. It wasn't until I woke up to hundreds of messages from friends, family, and even strangers offering their support that I felt the smallest spark of hope. They understood my pain. They saw me truly. And for the first time, I didn't feel completely alone in this. I had made my decision. I would sit down with Rachel next week. I owed her that much. I had to share my perspective. I had to reveal Caleb for who he truly was, for both our sakes. And if, after hearing everything, she still chose to stay with him, then that would be her decision. But I would have nothing more to do with it. Caleb had already signed the divorce papers. He sent me a message, curious about how I had prepared everything so quickly. But he was oblivious. He didn't know that I had been aware of his betrayal long before he had admitted anything. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The end was near, and soon I would be free. Update 2. I knew it was time to face Rachel, to have the heart-to-heart conversation I'd been avoiding, but it wasn't going to be easy. I reached out to her, determined to keep the confrontation civil. No shouting, no accusations, just the truth, raw and unfiltered. To my surprise, she agreed. We found a quiet corner, a neutral ground, but the tension between us was thick. I sat across from her, my heart pounding in my chest. There it was. This was going to be the moment of reckoning. "I just want the truth," I told her, my voice barely above a whisper. No fighting, just honesty. Rachel's smile, though, told a different story. It was that same smug, self-satisfied grin I'd seen far too often, like she reveled in the attention she'd stolen from me. She leaned back, practically savoring the words she was about to say. Her voice, dripping with conviction, began to weave her narrative. She confessed that she'd always had feelings for Caleb. She'd thought I wasn't good enough for him, not worthy of his love. I felt my breath catch in my throat. My own sister, my flesh and blood, had harbored this resentment all along. She had wanted us to break up from the very beginning, she said, but when we got married, she lost hope. It wasn't enough to just confess her feelings. She went further. Rachel told me about how she'd met Caleb at a bar, purely by chance. How they had struck up a conversation about his marriage, where Caleb had painted our relationship as empty. He'd made it sound like we were nothing but a facade. Her words cut deeper than I expected, and I fought the sting of betrayal that burned inside me. Rachel wasn't finished. She described how, in her mind, Caleb's unhappiness with me became her invitation. She comforted him, she said, and soon that comfort turned into something more. More than I could ever have imagined. With every word, her smugness grew. It was a sickening display of triumph, as if she'd won something I didn't even know was a competition. She described how Caleb kept pursuing her, how he even talked about leaving me for her. My stomach turned. How could this be happening? Then she tried to turn the tables on me. She questioned why I was jealous of her, as if I should be thankful she was doing what she was doing. She suggested I was somehow responsible for Caleb's actions, that I had failed as a partner. The audacity. How could she twist the blame onto me like that? It was beyond anything I could have expected. I had to hold myself together. I refused to get drawn into the madness of her accusations. I kept my voice steady, unwilling to let her words rattle me. But then, just as I was about to respond, Rachel dropped a bombshell. "I'm pregnant," she said, casually as if she were talking about a shopping trip. "It's Caleb's." The air around me thickened. The shock hit me like a tidal wave. Pregnant. Rachel, my own sister, was carrying Caleb's child. I could hardly breathe. This would tie her to him forever. Rachel seemed almost gleeful, her confidence brimming as she spoke of her plans. She and Caleb had discussed their future, and despite the circumstances, they had decided to go ahead with the pregnancy. I stared at her, numb. She was living in some twisted fairy tale, planning a life with Caleb. My stomach churned as she spoke about the future they envisioned together, completely oblivious to the devastation she had caused. I was suffocating in a mix of sadness for my sister, frustration with the situation, and hopelessness for what this meant for us. I had to speak. I had to tell her my side. So I took a deep breath and steadied myself before starting. "I've been planning the divorce for weeks," I said, the words heavy on my tongue. I explained how I had uncovered Caleb's infidelities, from lipstick smudges on shirts to his secret meetings in bars with other women. Rachel's face twisted in disbelief. She refused to believe what I was telling her. Caleb would have told me, she insisted, her voice trembling, but I knew better. Caleb was a master of lies, and I wasn't the only one who had been deceived. I showed her the evidence, the photos, the emails, the messages. The truth couldn't be denied. Caleb had betrayed me in ways that no one should ever have to endure. At first, Rachel tried to excuse him. "Even if he cheated, he loves me," she said. "We're meant to be together." Her words hit me like daggers. How could she stand by him after everything? How could she betray me in this way? I didn't want to argue anymore. I simply asked her, "How could you do this to me?" Her arrogance began to fade as the weight of the situation dawned on her. The gravity of her actions started to settle in, but still she defended Caleb. She said their love was special. I couldn't bear to listen any longer. With a broken heart, I stood up. "I wish you the best of luck," I said quietly, my voice thick with emotion. I didn't know if I meant it, but I knew I had to let go. Our bond had been shattered, and nothing would ever repair it. Update 3. 5 months have passed since that conversation with Rachel, and so much has changed. The divorce with Caleb is almost finalized. It's been a long, painful process, but we're close to the finish line. There's no custody battle to worry about, no splitting assets, just the end of a marriage that I've been trying to escape for so long. While the legal stuff has been grueling, there's a strange sense of relief in knowing that it will soon be over. No more pretending, no more lies. The news of Rachel's pregnancy devastated my mother. When she first heard, her face went pale. I watched as the shock turned into profound disappointment. She hasn't spoken to Rachel since. My mother can't comprehend the choices Rachel has made, and I don't blame her. As for Rachel, she hasn't reached out to me. Not since that meeting. She's chosen to move forward with Caleb, despite everything he's done. The pregnancy is progressing, and soon they'll be parents. Part of me wants to wish them well for the sake of the child they're bringing into the world. But the pain of their betrayal lingers, and the scars it's left on my heart aren't easy to ignore. Through it all, I've found solace in the support of my family and friends. They've helped me stay strong, reminding me that this chapter is just a part of my story, not the whole. I've rediscovered parts of myself that I had forgotten. Old passions, old friends, all the things I pushed aside for Caleb. Now, it's time to focus on me, to heal, to grow. I know the road ahead won't be easy, but I'm determined to walk it with my head held high. The future is uncertain, but I'm ready to embrace whatever comes next. To everyone who has been there for me, thank you. Your support has meant more than I can ever express. I can't wait to see what lies ahead.